Welcome back. In this video I'm going to be adding a winch to my Axial 10.3 Gladiator. I've already taken the front bumper off. In its place I'll be adding this metal one that I got on eBay, and it's fantastic because it already has a lot of the mounts drilled for various types of winches you can install on this. It is metal. It has bow shackles built into it, which are -1 off your total score at a competition. It also has the stinger on the front, another -1, and being a metal bumper where I compete anyway, I believe it's -3. So this is a -5 piece right here, and I'm going to be adding this scale winch to it. It's a Warren winch replica, and it comes with this little plate on the bottom like this screwed onto it, but because this has so many holes in it, we are able to remove this plate. Now, one of the things that I initially, when I removed it and tried to mount it on here, I found out it was tippy, so it can rock back and forth on the bottom of this winch. And there's a reason for that, is because it's not flat. So what I've done here is I've taken my Dremel tool and I've ground that flat so that if I put a straight edge against it, this side cannot rock. This side, if I put it against the bottom, you see it can rock pretty badly. So what I'm going to do is finish grinding this one the same as this one. I just took a grinding wheel and flattened it out, and it's not science, it's just creating a flat surface. I might grind this a little more just to refine it a bit, but I think between the two screw holes it is pretty much a straight plane. If I go beyond the screws to make it, I'm gonna grind that a little more, just to make sure that I get that as flat as it possibly can be. It's close, very close. This one is not even close down there. As you can see, this moves quite a bit. So once that's on, I will be able to install this very cleanly on the front of the winch without this backing plate right here. And I have this backing plate on my other two trucks because they're going through a plastic bumper, and this one being metal with all the holes already drilled, I didn't need to do that. This bumper was about a $20 bumper, and it also comes with LED lights that I'm not going to use, and I might go ahead and buy another one of these for my Red Cat because it's pretty nice, and it's another -2 at a comp. So this application for the 10.3, I have to use this bar that bolts onto the back. Otherwise you could bolt it directly, and it just attaches at the ends here with 2 screws on either end and then goes in. The kit I had comes with 2 lengths of these parts that go into the chassis. So I'll go ahead and get this drilled out, or not drilled out, but filed off so that it is flat. We'll go ahead and mount it up, and then I'll show you my winch controller. I did a test fit with this bumper and realized that the screws that used to hold it onto this plate are these very tiny ones right here. I don't know if you even noticed them in the shop before, but they're very small, and the tip of this screwdriver is 1.5 millimeters, so you can see how very small this is. And the problem with that I don't like is when you go to screw this into the bumper, that's all the threads that come out of the top. Well, that's not much to go into a winch that is supposed to support the weight of the vehicle. That's only about 2 or 3 threads. That's a problem. Fortunately, they did provide some longer screws which have a different type of head on them, which is fine, but when you screw them in, you find out they're exactly the same thread pitch and size. The problem is that's all the farther they go in, and that is a lot thicker than this piece of metal. So it's never going to bind down that way, the way it needs to clamp. So that is the amount of thread that I'm going to use a Dremel wheel to cut off of this screw, because I need that to go clear in and seat. I've already done that with one screw here, and I'll show you the size difference between the two. Alright. Here it is. You know, I'm doing a terrible demonstration here, but you can see that I have removed quite a bit of material from the first screw in the picture here. I just used a Dremel cutoff wheel like this and held it inside of a shock tool so that I could grip it hard enough without any chance of that thing shooting off across the room and me not finding it again. But these are just too small. They're not going to work as far as mounting the winch to the bumper. But I was, you know, I don't know, a lot of you guys probably watch Fab Rats on YouTube, and some people call Paul a hack. He's not a hack at all. I think he has to do that stuff because when you are building something that was never intended, you have to solve problems you never foresaw. So that's what this is on a small scale. You're just solving problems that you create for yourself by upgrading things the way you want them. And it's not a problem, it's just a matter of engineering and getting it right. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off 3 more of these longer screws to match the length of this one, and I'll go ahead and bolt it in. This is your safety third tip of the day. Anytime you are starting a rotating tool that has a grinding wheel on it, do not start this with it in line with your eyes like this. I just had one fly apart, and I knew not to do that, and it flew apart and hit something somewhere else in the room because it was not in the same plane as my eyeball. So anytime, like I said, if these are going to fly apart, it's probably has a higher likelihood of happening at startup. And if you even bump this disc on something, it'll put a crack in it and compromise it. So be careful when you're using these. They're great tools, but they do sometimes fail. I have all 4 of these screws shortened to a level that they can be accepted completely into this base here. I want to get as many threads as I can in there, but not so many that it hits the end and stops before it's fully seated, because I want those to go in as deep as they possibly can. So I think that's going to work. I'll test fit each one, and then I'll pull it out and Loctite it with blue Loctite, and then start shoving that in, basically hooking it onto the bumper. Another thing I've done wrong in the past is when I go to hook these up, you get kind of locked into what you're doing. When you hook up this bumper, I did this once. I actually mounted it so that the rope was coming out the wrong end towards the truck. That would do absolutely no good. So I'm going to go ahead and put the first one in, and the second one, because they're on the outside, I'll show you those installed, and then I'll show you the trick on the bottom 2. I've screwed the back 2 screws in, the rear side of the bumper in, but not completely all the way. And the screw holes that I need to access to finish this up are accessible by passing the screw through the bumper and then into the hole like that. And whoever designed this, they put the holes in the right place. It's fantastic. And I'm going to leave that just a little bit loose so that I can put the last one in. And then once the last screw's in, I'll go ahead and tighten all 4 of them down, and it should be seated and ready for installation on the truck, and then wiring hooked up. Also, this came with wires that are not compatible with the wire connectors, I should say. They're not compatible with the winch controller I have. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the end of this off, and I'm going to cut it probably right about here so I can still use that end for something else, and I'll just solder it into the existing wires to the winch controller. And it's a pretty slick controller, and that's a pretty slick install. That's a solid mount. I've got lots of threads into that, and that's not going anywhere. That is a beautiful install, super clean, and I got rid of the mounting plate that went with it, because why would I want to bolt an additional piece of material to my truck that doesn't need to be there? It's all black this way. It's clean looking. I think it's probably more scale. So I'll go ahead and test fit this. Should go on just fine. Yep, nothing hits the screw holes. I'll blue Loctite all 4 of these screw holes as I put it together, and then it'll be ready for installation back on the truck. It's looking good. I really like this truck. I bought it off my friend Nick at work. He made me a super deal on it. I didn't know I wanted it, but I do, and I did, and it's built. And the only thing left to do to finish it is to do a little bit of cutting and soldering, and this thing will be ready for its next competition. Anytime you do a competition, you definitely want a winch, because it'll get you out of a bad situation. Once you know your progress can no longer continue, you can just winch yourself on forward to whatever you need to go to. And where I go, it's only 1 point for a winch rather than 5 points for a mistake, or 10 points for a rollover or something like that, where you got to physically grab the truck. That is not ideal, but I really dig this winch. That looks good on there, and it's going to be a nice addition. This mess of wire here is my winch controller, and I ordered it so that I could use my radio instead of a separate remote button to activate my winch. And as you can see, it's got plenty of cord on it. This part inside of the shrink wrap is the actual controller that takes it from a 3-wire to a 2-wire, and the problem here is these ends are incompatible. So I think what I'm going to do is cut the end off of this, and I have another end, the female end, that I can just solder onto this wire, and then the two can still be taken apart rather than being permanently joined together with solder as one piece from the controller clear to the winch. Then if I ever have to change it, I just cut the end of it off and solder it onto the new end, and it'll plug in again. So I like to leave things untouched as much as I can, but anytime I need to void a warranty, I go ahead and do it. This bag of wires right here was actually an accidental purchase a while back, and I decided to keep it because I save all the pieces. And it turns out that's exactly the connector I need to splice in the wires from the winch over here. So I'm going to cut this end off, solder these together, put some shrink wrap on it. We'll be ready to power it up. It's about midnight here, so my ability to speak is slowly degrading as I get tired, but one of the things about this winch controller, it's either extending or retracting. There's no variable rate, and unfortunately the first thing I don't like about my FlySky G7P controller, which otherwise I feel like is a great controller, I wish it had 2 momentary switches so that I could push to extend and push to retract, but I don't have that. So instead what I've done is I've used the thumb lever that I would, on the Capra, I use this thumb lever here for my 4-wheel steer. And this one, I have it set up so that if I push forward, it extends the winch out. And if I pull it back, it comes back in. Center is stopped. But one of the things I like to do when I get a brand new winch is I extend the whole thing out until it has about 2 wraps on the spool, because I don't want that thing to go all the way out. And right now it looks like I've got about 4 wraps on it, but I do have quite a bit of length out already, so give it a little more. I don't want the whole thing to come out because I want wraps holding it on, not just the knot at the end. So what I do here is that's as far as I want this thing to extend on any given basis. So I take a red magic marker and I'm going to put a line right here. I'm going to put one here, and then I'm going to put a larger block here, because that's as far out as I want this to ever go. And I'll leave 4 marks here. Okay, that's my extension point for maximum winch. Okay, what I'm going to also do, let me find my black marker. I'll be right back with you. Alright, I have my black marker here, and I'm just going to put a solid line here so I know this is kind of the end of the rope. So I've marked it there. And what I do from here is I take the hook and let me zoom out a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. I take the hook and I put it there, and then I find where the end of that is, and that's my halfway point right here on the rope. So I'll make a mark here, and this is my halfway mark. So when half of the winch is out, I've got a mark right here. So I'm going to take this mark, line it up with this mark, and then it leaves me with another loop halfway between those. So I'll put a mark here. And then I'll also take the hook and go to my middle point of the rope here, pull string tight. This is the middle of that section. So now I'm going to have a mark at every quarter that the rope comes out. I'll show you what that looks like in a second here. This is the part where it's all going to make sense. Alright, as the winch line comes out, you're going to see a black line on it right there. See that black line on the middle of the rope? Yeah, it's actually right here. That is 25% extension. Coming out a little farther, there's the 50% extension line right there. As we proceed out more, 75% showed up. And then there's the end, and that's going to keep me right at about, I'll zoom in there, I've got 4 wraps on it. That's fine, I like that, but I've got some warning there at the end of where to stop my rope before it comes off the spool. So I'm going to call this a successful project. Reel it back in. You can see that mark on the line where each quarter of rope is. Halfway. 1 quarter left. And there it is. In the next video, we'll just go over the features and show you everything it does. It's got some pretty trick things on it that make it mine. Every crawler out there eventually becomes like a fingerprint to the owner. Everybody builds it the way they think it should be, and I like this one. I think this one, if I competed with it, would win in a scale class potentially, depending on the level of competition I was at. Obviously, I'm in regional. I think it'd do pretty well. So never know till we try. That's my controller telling me doesn't like the fact that I haven't moved a button in a while, so there it is. I moved a button. Anyway, that's going to be all for tonight. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later.